Hello, my lovelies. How are you doing? Welcome to another episode of McCall Media TV Live, whereby myself, Angela McCall, will be talking to you today about the costs of a WordPress website and what's involved, what sort of things that you should be kind of expecting to pay out for, or maybe negotiate with your website developer, that kind of thing, and how much time it's going to take. So before I crack on, let's play my intro and we'll get started. Okay, so the very first thing that most people will want to know about is obviously the domain name charges and the costs involved with that. Now, what you have to bear in mind is that the first year that you purchase a domain name, the companies that are selling domain name services will be promoting lots and lots of different incentives for you. So the first year of you purchasing a domain name, you're talking a couple of quid, less than maybe a Costa Coffee type kind of fee, depending on the company that you are purchasing your domain name with. What you really need to look at is what it's going to cost you in year 2, in year 3, and so on and so forth, because that's where people don't necessarily plan, and essentially they get themselves a wee bit caught out. Now, the hosting company, you'll be able to go and see it on my Tools of the Trade website page. I use Ionos. So for a .co.uk domain name, they charge in the region of about £5, depending VAT, that kind of thing, for a .co.uk in the first year. So real cheap to easy to get yourself up and running with a professional domain name. So the next thing, whilst we're mentioning Ionos, is the fact that you're going to need your hosting. Now, this again is a little area that people get themselves really caught out with. So hosting companies basically provide you with these servers. Think of them as houses that your website will live in, and they are connected to the internet. Now, what those security measures are, how many websites, how big that website can grow, all of these different functionalities, as it were, will determine the price of the hosting that you are paying for. Now, for a WordPress website, for most small business owners, the kind of clients that I would actually deal with within McCall Media Limited, the hosting that you would need generally, you could be looking at sort of like maybe £5-10 a month type kind of costs and fees. And what will actually happen is companies will know that you can't have a domain name without the hosting and the hosting without the domain name, because the two work in unison. So they'll do packages and incentives in that first year. So again, the first thing that I would say to you to think about and to question with any website designer, or if you're going to do this yourself, is to think about what happens in year 2 once that initial first 12 months promotional offer, etc., expires. Okay, now, one thing that people don't think about is their security certificates. Now, this is probably where I'm going to lose you guys. It's going to go right over your head. But essentially, you need to have an SSL security certificate on your website. Now, this is very important if you plan on doing things that involves money, and or you plan on maybe say being a blogger or looking or obtaining traffic through SEO means, because when you operate a website that doesn't have that SSL certificate, and I'll show you in just a second how to spot it, you're not ranked very clearly with Google. Google doesn't like sites that do not operate an SSL certificate. So most amateurs or do-it-yourself website designers looking to try and save themselves some costs think, oh, I don't need that. And what they're actually doing is really like basically trying to drive a car with the brakes constantly on. You can't operate a website properly and efficiently without an SSL certificate. It causes you sorts of the invisible problems and challenges that you'll come across, those bumps in the road that you just don't see, and you won't know why that your visitors to your website and things are experiencing it. Now, I use, again, like I just said to you a minute ago, Ionos. Ionos, for a yearly charges £25 to add that to your hosting. Now, all the things I should just point out here, and I forgot to say this at the very beginning, all of the costs that I'm providing you with at the moment are based on you guys doing it for yourselves, okay? So you would only buy one hosting account, one, maybe 2 domain names. You would only buy one SSL certificate. So your environment and my environment are completely different, because I work in bulk and batch supplies and like sort of agency style licenses. So my entire environment for costing these things is completely different, but I'm going to cover that right at the end of the video, so stay tuned, and how that will affect you. So we've covered the SSL certificate. So again, if you was going to do your own website, or you wanted to know what was involved, you've got your domain, your hosting, and your SSL certificate. Now, there are lots of amazing free themes that you can download and use. So this potentially could be a zero cost to you. However, depending on what your objectives are with your website and what tools, functionalities, services and things that you're going to want it to do, it might be well worth your while actually purchasing a theme for your site to start with. Now, the theme that I use, I've been using these guys for about 5 or 6 years now. And again, it's called Fame Themes. They have a blanket license as an agency. But if you was to go and buy a standalone one license for your website, you're going to be looking in the region of about £50 to £100. Okay. Now that again is a cost that a lot of people don't consider. Now, if you are a business startup and you've got some very sort of tech savvy friends, then the chances are you're not going to need necessarily to purchase a theme. You can quite happily hit the ground running with some free themes and utilize some plugins and do your homework. It depends how much time you've got to invest in this project, because there are always going to be suppliers and companies out there that provide tools and features and have free bonuses or free offers or the light versions. It's a matter of you doing your homework to find and utilize those. And if you want to spend your time doing that, that's fine. From my perspective as an agency, it's a complete waste of my time, because I know also that those tools will also need quite a lot of manipulation or development work or tweaking, as it were, in order to get them to work the way they want. And so sometimes it's just easier to bite the bullet and buy yourself an appropriate theme that does the job that you want it to do. So that's something you need to budget for. So I would say allow a budget of around about £50 to £100 for a single site license. Backups. Most small do-it-yourself type style website owners, they just don't think about backing up your website. You can get some free plugins. So again, this could essentially just for yourselves be a zero cost. But essentially, if you want to have a more robust type backup environment for your website, then you are going to have to pay for a plugin or learn to do it yourself. Now, if you learn to do it yourself, there's a manual way of doing it. I would say you need to kind of do it on a weekly basis, and I'll probably do a tutorial in the future, but it's a real flaff. And it's one of those things that if you hock it up basically, and then something horrid happens to your website, like it gets a spam attack or something like that, and it's hacked, or that somebody gets your username and password and they do something nasty, you can't revert back very easily to a site that you've backed up if you haven't backed it up the correct way. So for the risk and the money that you're saving, you could probably potentially burn yourself quite a lot of inconvenience and stress just trying to save yourself like 10-15 quid. Now, I use a company called Updraft for the backups, and if you was to go and buy a single purchase license for a 12-month period, they currently charge around about the £40 mark. So again, this is a cost that most people don't think to consider putting in. They think, oh, I'll learn to do it myself and this, that and the other, and it can be quite technical because you've got the back-end database and there's a way to download that in order to make sure that the configuration works with your hosting environment's security settings. And then of course you've got to make sure that is still speaking to the front end of your website, and it can get very messy. So one of the biggest purchases, not necessarily financially, but one of the biggest investments that you should do is always get yourself a backup plugin. A couple of clicks, set up the configuration, it stores it as a zip file somewhere on like Google Drive, and it's job done. And it's also a one-click recovery process should things go wrong. Okay, so next thing I want to mention is your branded email services. The number of businesses out there that I see operating with something like mccallmedia@gmail.com, and it's just wrong. You are not a Gmail business, okay? You are McCall Media in that sense, okay? You should be using a branded domain name aspect for your email address. It looks professional. People will take you seriously. They know that you are then operating like a professional company and not someone trying to save yourself a few quid. Now, your hosting company will provide you with email or webmail version services. They are all essentially the same thing. It's depending on how you connect to those email accounts. Personally speaking, depending on the size of your business, I would suggest heavily you think about how you engage your email services with your brand and your business. And I'll tell you for why. If it's just kind of like you're a startup or a two-person business, then getting your email branded through like a couple of like email accounts, as it were, or inboxes through your hosting company is probably the easiest, simplest and stress-free way to do it. And for a couple of quid, I think Ionos, for example, charge £1 extra per mailbox to produce some sort of like spam filtering. So it can be very cheap, very quick and easy to set up and have a professional environment. However, if you have the intention to use Microsoft Office services like Word, Excel, go that one step extra, upgrade to get Microsoft 365 and do the exchange. Yes, it will cost you about £12 to £15 a month per person, but all of your entire email service environment will be then backed up properly through the Microsoft Exchange. That's all your calendar outlooks, all your contacts in Outlook, and you can configure an Outlook environment and work like a professional office. And that is what the environment that most people are used to working via. So that is a top tip there for you as well. So again, realistically, if you weren't in that position to do the whole Microsoft thing and you just wanted a very quick email for the moment, maybe it's the early stages of your business, go with your hosting company. You can always turn it off, but you'll probably allow a £5 budget per account. Okay, next thing, data capture forms. Again, this is all depending on your personal business needs. Now, I'm going to give you an example. Most WordPress plugins will come with a very simple, free to use, light, they call it light or like free, a contact form or a data capture form. So people visiting your website can leave basically their first name, last name, email address, possibly a comments box. And that might just be sufficient for your needs, at which point you can generally find a plugin out there. I could probably name 3 or 4 right now that won't cost you anything at all, will allow you to sort of send those the content of those forms once they've been submitted to your email account and allow you to function quite nicely, and it's not going to cost you anything. However, if you are going to heavily use, which is generally the direction I push a lot of my clients down, using your website as a hub that brings in all your social media accounts and all your different aspects of your business, and you use it as a lead generation tool, then you're going to want to use or implement lots of different styles of questioning in that form process. Maybe you want to use it as like an enrollment form. For example, on my website this weekend, I've spent a lot of time actually building up a consultation form so that when people want to speak with me about their services or what I can do for them, you know, I've got about 10 questions that helps me as a business fact find, at which point those questions are paginated. And those kind of tools and functionalities of forms don't come on free versions, at which point, if you are going to engage in a site that's a little bit more sort of upbeat, shall we say, then you're going to need to have a plugin. And I'm just looking over here on my other page. So a one site license with, say, for example, something like WP Forms, which is the plugin that I've chosen to use on my business, is £40, and obviously give or take the VAT aspect with you as well. So that's another cost that a lot of people don't think and don't realise. And of course, you get so far down this path, 2 months, 3 months later, and all these ideas are starting to flood around in your head about what you can do with your website and how you can use it. And then there's this extra cost that comes in, and this extra cost, and people just don't realise what is actually involved. Okay, so we've covered the data capture forms. The next thing you need to think about is also your email marketing supplier. So you're going to want to build yourself an email marketing list. Now, the easiest, cheapest, in fact, it's for free way to hit the ground running is you can embed a MailChimp form. They will allow you to do very basic functionality for email marketing, your list of fans, followers, audience, tribe, whatever you want to call them. However, like many of the tools that I've already explained, I am not a fan of MailChimp, because I find that actually by the time you start needing some of its services and you start paying for those services, when you compare that price to some of the other companies that provide email marketing software, you get a lot more sort of punch for your bucks, as it were, when you look around and you work with other companies. Now, if you're looking for a low cost but sort of all singing, all dancing kind of email marketing company to work with, I suggest Active Campaign. Again, I'll put a link to them in a little bit after this video, because they are quite low cost. They do connect into most of the tools and services and functionalities that my clients need as small businesses. And so that ethos, as it were, helps save them money further on down the path, as it were. And something like Active Campaign, I think it's about £15 a month, thereabouts, that you need to budget for. You can obviously go right singing and dancing and go and use companies like, I'm going to say Infusionsoft, but it's changed its name to Keep now and things like that. But then you're looking at sort of, you could be looking anything up to about sort of £200-ish a month as a subscription for a full singing and dancing CRM system. So it really does depend on how involved you want to go. Now, I've just seen a comment come in. Let me have a look. Okay, someone's just, right, I'll read that one out at the end. That's fine. Okay, so let's have a look. So email marketing suppliers, that's cool. Right, the next thing that you don't think about is that you've got to have a GDPR privacy policy. Now, I say you've got to have, if you have any type of cookies, which would cover things like Google Analytics and Facebook pixel tracking software, even if you don't collect anyone's personal data, as in you do not ask their name, their email, their anything to do with them, even if you're just running that type of pixel software or Google Analytics software in the background, you're going to need to have a GDPR policy. Now, there are companies out there that provide very basic templates. You need to go and do your homework. I'm not going to recommend any, because if I recommend something, you use it and it's not quite right. Given that this is a legal entity, I don't want anyone coming back and sort of shouting at me, shall we say. So one of the things I would suggest you do is, especially if you're networking and you're in the business environment already, ask around for local solicitors that operate in the business to business world. Most of them will have some sort of templated GDPR policy. There are online service providers as well that you can go and buy like a sort of a template license for all different types of legal documents, and you can buy them as a subscription, and then you can just tweak them and download them and put your blurb in, as it were. So there's a ways around of it that doesn't necessarily have to cost you hundreds and hundreds of pounds. For example, though, I will point out that when I had my business terms and conditions or trading terms and conditions wrote for when I work with my clients, they did include my GDPR policy, and the whole of that service was in the £400 to £600 range, because I had added on a few sort of extras and bolt-ons. So you probably could expect, if you wanted something customized, to be around at least £200 upwards for a customized GDPR policy. So it could well be worthwhile going and have a look for a sort of a monthly subscription somewhere for about a sort of 40 quid. Okay. Next one, we then have, you've also got to think about your spam protection on your website. Now, spam protection are things like when you download and install WordPress, there's this plugin that generally comes along automatically called Ask-Commit, and I never can say it properly, but it's probably the most well-known spam protection plugin that you can have in a WordPress environment. Now, they do provide, if your WordPress website is for more like personal blogging needs as opposed to business and earning money from or operating as a business, then they'll allow you to have a service for free. If not, and I'm just looking to see if I've got a note here on how much it costs, you can, I think it's about, sort of starts at about £4 a month upwards, depending on the level of protection that you want. So again, it doesn't sound that much, but that is essentially about £50 upwards a year as an extra cost to you that you would need to think about and consider as well with your business. Oh, and just in case you're not sure what it does, this is to stop all of those spam attacks. So on a WordPress website, for example, you can allow people to leave comments. Visitors to your site can leave comments on your blog articles and on your pages if you turn them on or off, obviously. But then there's people that write programs that basically hit your website constantly trying to get stupid by this sex object or this person or whatever it is, nonsense, and they are full of gobbledygook and rubbish, and that's what a spam attack is. Okay, so next thing we've got on my little list here. Okay, basic SEO plugin type tools and software. Now, if you have been following me for a while, you will know that I am not at all a fan of paying any money for SEO optimization on your website? And everybody goes, oh, you know, why? Da, 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 da. Okay, I will do a video on this on another day. In fact, I've actually done one in the past called SEO is Dead, and I'll put a link somewhere on this video screen after this video's gone live. But essentially, SEO for your website was a brilliant tool to use back in the day, 20-ish years ago, when the only way to find websites was to do a search, okay? But there are thousands of other ways to engage with websites these days. And I am of the opinion that if you're going to put money behind something to drive traffic to your website, you're far better off investing in a paid advertising campaign where every single tiny, minute metric can be tested, tweaked, and challenged to see what's working and what's not working for you, as opposed to spending money trying to get SEO optimization to occur on your site for Google to then change the algorithm overnight and let all your efforts be wasted. Now, bearing this in mind, what I am going to say is kind of then backtrack on myself, is that it is still worth trying to organically ride the wave of SEO on your site, for example. So I would always suggest you download the Yoast SEO plugin. Most people know the name now. It's pretty much the most common SEO plugin that there is out there. And of course, these guys have got various other tools and things that can plug into that to help boost it, depending on the nature of your site. Like you can have like a video SEO boosting type package added to the normal plugin and that kind of thing. If you are going to pay for any SEO on your website, then I would suggest you pay for their plugin to be upgraded so that you've got kind of like the full standard plugin for SEO, at which point I'm just looking at my website here, or my spreadsheet. It's £89 last time I checked, plus VAT. So you're looking at just around about the £100 mark for another additional cost to your website, operating fees. Now, again, that isn't something you have to do. That is something you could do, but I just thought that is something that you should actually consider as part of the cost of your website. Then we have stock video library, photos, assets. Now, as a company or an agency like myself, I basically have a blanket license with a company called Envato, which I pay for an annual license, and I can use an unlimited resource or tap into an unlimited resource of I don't know, Photoshop assets, photos, videos, Premiere Pro, intros and outros, you name it. If it's a media type asset that I could purchase, they provide it. Now, that to me is a very good purchase. Now, you guys aren't probably going to utilize that enough. So what you will find is that there are other companies out there that provide stock library license type abilities to purchase on an as-you-go basis. And what they will do is they will sell you credits. So for, say, like 90 quid or 100 quid, you can go and buy X amount of credits, and these credits are then used to purchase the photos. What I would say is, on something like £100 budget, if your photos are only going to be used on your website, then you could probably get yourself about 4 or 5 photos. If that photo is something that's going to affect your branding, and you're going to want that same photo and image to correspond with brochures, with pull-up banners, then you're going to need to buy a high quality print asset. And you could probably burn the entire £100, then some more, on just one photo. So you need to think very carefully about what kind of imagery and things like that you're going to need to have access to. Now, obviously, if you're using an agency like myself, then obviously I get that kind of blanket license for all my clients, and it doesn't cost you guys any extra money. So this is when it starts to play out. And actually what you're trying to do is save yourself money by doing it yourself, and it'll end up costing you more than actually coming to a website designer like myself in the first place. And then finally, let me come down to the very last point, is how much does it cost? Now, from my perspective, I saw this ages ago. I'm just going to show you a little quote that I saw come up on my screen. Okay, I'm just going to hide it. It says there, if I do a job in 30 minutes, let me go this way. It's because I spent 10 years learning how to do that job in 30 minutes, and you owe me for the years and not the minutes. Now, I'm going to re-emphasize this by explaining something that's happened to me this month with one of my new clients. I'm doing a complete site rebuild for one of my clients, and he's a lovely guy, and he turned around to me and said, so have a look at my site at the moment, see what you think. And I was like, okay. So I've had a good old nose of what he's currently got going on. And he said to me, hand on heart, Ange, it took me about 6 months doing this myself, learning as I went to get the site up to that point. I was like, okay, it's got no Google Analytics. It's breaking various user protocols on having text that goes the full width of the screen instead of in columns, think newspapers. Some of the links don't work properly or go to the wrong places. Just, I can tell quite quickly from a professional point of view that it was done by someone who isn't in the trade. He turned around, obviously explained that it took 6 months to get to that point. I was like, fine, fair enough. He's like, Ange, how long would it take you, hand on heart, to get a site to a better standard than that brochure style site was? Probably 6 to 8 hours. And I'm not meaning that in a big-headed way, but what you've got to bear in mind is that everybody has a skill set. That's why they do their profession. That's why I can sit here right now on a live video stream with no prompts, no script to read, and explain my trade and profession to you, because I know what it is that I know. And it's taken me 25 years of being in the freelance world, working with small business owners to understand the challenges and their wants, needs, and the things and the tools that they are likely going to use. So I know my market and my audience really well. So that means I also know the kind of tools that they want. So instead of spending an afternoon trying to research which backup plugin to use, I can go bang, have it up and loaded within a couple of minutes. Now, I also said at the beginning of this video, one of the things that you guys wanted to know about was time as well. So as I've just given you an example in that last 5 minutes about how long it will take me to create a really good brochure website, as it were, what you have to bear in mind is that a website is different for absolutely every single business. Okay, there is generally not one website the same. So let me give you some examples of time aspects. If you are a new business startup doing everything for the first time with nothing to work from, trusting the fact that you are writing your copy for yourselves and you've already got your brand assets, that's like your logos, and your color scheme, and you can provide us with the names of the fonts that you want to use and that kind of thing. So all we have to do is concentrate on designing and publishing that website for you. Then obviously there's a lot quicker process involved in obviously having to design those aspects with you. And for what I would say for most businesses, especially small businesses that are launching for the first time, don't try and go for a Rome style sized site on that very first purchase, because you won't have enough experience to know all the things that you want your website to do. Your business entities and its services and things like that will still be developing, and you will be changing your mind on a daily basis about how you do things. And the best way to get started is to literally launch yourself a one-page website that has an about section, just so that people know who you are, a contact us section so they know how to get in contact with you, and like the top level overview of your main 3 or 4 services. And that will allow us as the designer to still style your entire environments. You've still got all your branding there, all your framework, all your logos and fonts, and it still looks the part for your brand. And then what will happen is, maybe month 2, once you've had a few more weeks traction, you'll be able to add in and elaborate and split those services, instead of being a little like a little box on that front page, into a page in its own right. And that's how your website will evolve. And if you take it on a step-by-step basis, you will ensure that what you get is actually what you need, as opposed to being pushed by an overzealous website designer into having like this amazing site that actually 6 months down the line is completely redundant because you didn't know enough at the time of starting out on that front line. So in all honesty, what you're doing is you're paying for the expertise with regards to the labor of the person who is delivering the site. If you're doing it for yourself, then I've given you some ideas there on the costs. And just to give you a quick summary before I leave today, and there's been a couple of comments, I've actually tutored that up, all those companies that I've provided, based on single site licenses and services, as if you are one person doing it yourself. That entire list of things that I've just said would come to £322.70, and that's before you've paid for any labour for anybody to do the design work for you. So just bear in mind that is an operating cost for your business. Let's say £350 a year just to get the tools and functionalities embedded in your site infrastructure the way that you need it to be. Okay, so that kind of brings me to a slight conclusion, because I know that was a bit of a longer video than normal. I did see a comment, so let me just share that on screen. So Nicola says, I need to look more into an in-depth form for my website. So yeah, I can help you with that, Nicola. If you want to ping me a message at some point, we can go through some of the different types of forms that are available and the services. So that's cool. And I think that's about it from me today. So I know it's been a bit of a long one and I've not been around for a couple of weeks, but I hope you really enjoyed it. I hope I've answered lots of questions. I hope that's given you lots of food for thought. And if you do have any questions, don't forget, I have got the hashtag Ask McCall Media. Let me just see. I'm just trying to get my little thing to pop up and it's disappeared. Oh, it's all gone completely. There you go. Comments. Where's it gone? Banners. Brand. Oh, it's all gone. I can't find it. Never mind. I'll do it another day. So I was going to put my little hashtag across the screen there, but I've been playing with all my branding, so things have changed. Anyway, so thank you very much for watching for me today. Please subscribe to my channel. Please stay notified. And if you've got any questions, use the hashtag Ask McCall Media.